Visa is one of the most well-known logo on the planet. Fun fact, they chose the name since it is basic enough to be understood in any language. The company provides electronic fund transfers to all across the world, and having up to 1,700 transactions happening per second. No wonder, the stock have consistently performed well since its IPO in 2008 during the financial crises, returning a total of 1,200% return, not including dividend to investors during the period. So for today's video, we are going to learn about how did Visa start, important events in Visa's history, how does Visa work, and final takeaway. In 1949, the first modern credit card as we know it was introduced, the Diners Club. The company was founded in 1949 by Frank McNamara and his partner, Ralph Schneider. According to legend, McNamara got the idea after arguing with a restaurant manager to pay his bill, after forgetting his wallet. The Diners Club began with a series of cardboard cards that selected men could use for 27 different restaurants in the area. It began as a 200-member men-only friends network. Indeed, it was a different time, when women were not allowed to have credit products. The Diners Club would go on to become the first credit card to be accepted outside of the local area, and it would grow to 42,000 members across the United States in the next 2 years. In 1959, American Express invented the modern-day plastic credit card, which was immediately adopted by the three major players at the time: Bank of America, Carte Blanche, and Diners Club. The establishment of revolving credit by Bank of America, with their Bank AmeriCard, was the last step to today's credit card. It was the first revolving credit card, which means that once you use the card and pay the bill, you get the credit back to use later. Bank AmeriCard, which was founded in 1966, was the forerunner of Visa. The date September 18, 1958, is important in Visa's history. That was the date that Bank of America launched their aforementioned Bank AmeriCard credit card in Fresno, California. The Bank AmeriCard was the invention of Joseph P. Williams, who was the leader of Bank of America's in-house development think tank, Customer Services Research Group. Williams' main success was bringing to fruition the successful implementation of the first all-purpose credit card. The average middle-class American in the 1950s had many revolving credit accounts with various merchants. For both the merchant and the consumer, such a system was both inefficient and inconvenient. Consolidation was necessitated by the necessity to maintain so many accounts or cards and keep track of separate bills each month for both parties. There was no uniform financial instrument available to the general public at the time. The financial industry could see it, but no one had yet solved the problem. The Diners Club card was available nationwide, but payments had to be paid in full each month, and numerous attempts to unify credit cards failed, primarily due to tiny, local banks lacking the resources to make them function. These failures, as well as the success of Sears and Mobil Oil in making revolving credit cards work for their businesses, Williams and Bank of America decided to run a test. After examining the results, they chose Fresno, California, as a test site for their concept, because it had a population of 250,000 people, which was large enough to support a credit card, but small enough to keep initial expenses low. Bank of America had a 45% market share in Fresno at the time. The test began with Bank of America dumping 65,000 unsolicited Bank AmeriCard offers into Fresno's mailboxes. The test worked well initially, and by March 1959, it had expanded to include San Francisco and Sacramento, and by June, they were dropping offers in Los Angeles. By the end of October of that year, BankAmericard had mailed out 2 million offers and had been accepted by 20,000 merchants across the state. Despite the success in increasing card demand and merchant acceptance, there were issues. Soon after, over 22% of the accounts were delinquent, far exceeding the predicted 4%, and there were numerous credit card fraud allegations. The bank spent more than $8.8 million to establish BankAmericard, including advertising and overhead. The total cost was almost $20 million. To save the BankAmericard's reputation, the corporation undertook a public relations campaign, and by 1961, it was profitable for the first time. It was off to the races once they cleared up the lingo. The company kept the reputation a little on the shady side to ward off competitors, which worked until 1966, and the truth about how profitable the BankAmericard became public knowledge. Then Bank of America started to expand beyond California, which was its original goal, to begin competing with another up-and-comer called MasterCharge, and later renamed into MasterCard.
Mr. Brosnan?
Eagle House, please.
Yes.
Mr. Braun.
Sorry to keep you. Traffic was a killer.
The origins of Visa are a fascinating story, and one that shows how the humble origins of some products expand into something global. One good idea can sprout into a world-changing idea. Visa has had several notable moments in its history. Some are critical to the development of the beast today that is Visa. The Hawk, a well-known figure in Visa's history, joined the company in 1968. Hawk was a manager at the National Bank of Commerce when he was recruited to oversee the BankAmericard's rollout in the Pacific Northwest in 1968. Hawk immediately discovered that the BankAmericard's distribution had been haphazard, and that there were issues with interchange fees, because Bank of America had grown swiftly without considering how banks handled fee billing between merchants and consumers, with the bank in the middle. It wasn't an issue when only Bank of America offered the product, but it started to create issues when they started offering licenses outside of their network. Hawk recognized these problems and created a committee of other banks that persuaded Bank of America that the BankAmericard had a future outside the bank. Bank of America relinquished management of the BankAmericard initiative in 1970. The program was taken up by BankAmericard's various issuer banks. They came up with the idea for the National BankAmericard. With Hawk as NBI's first president and CEO, these acts formed an alliance or jointly owned consortium. In 1973, National BankAmericard launched the precursor to VisaNet. The company launched a protocol language that established the first electronic authorization system. They followed that release with the first electronic clearing and settlement system. The first debit card debuted in the First National Bank of Seattle, which would drive Visa's revenues for decades. Visa as we know it comes into being. Following its international expansion, the corporation concluded that uniting both international and national banks would be in the merged company's best interests. However, introducing a worldwide card like BankAmericard was met with a lot of opposition. As a result, Hawk coined the term Visa as a coalition of multinational corporations, complete with a blue, white, and gold flag that incorporated the colors of foreign flags. Hawk believed that the term Visa was simple to pronounce in any language, was easily remembered, and signified universal recognition. And finally, on October 11, 2005, Visa announced it would merge some of its business and become a public company, Visa Incorporated. Under the I.P.O. reorganization, Visa Canada, Visa International, and Visa USA would merge into the new company. On November 9, 2007, Visa submitted its $10 billion IPO, and on March 18, 2008, the company went public. The initial offering sold 406 million shares at $44 per share, which raised $17.9 billion, which at the time was the largest IPO in US history. After the IPO, Visa traded on the New York Stock Exchange with the ticker symbol V. Fees produced from payment flow on Visa's VisaNet network are the company's primary source of revenue. This protocol, developed by Visa in 1973, enables money transfers between merchants and consumers. This system encompasses technology, services, products, and other programs that make it easier for financial institutions, merchants, customers, and governments to exchange monetary information electronically. Visa and MasterCard define the regulations that allow these financial transactions to take place via their payment trails, with Visa providing the most security and reliability. Visa's payment process involves these 3 steps. 1. Authorization, which is the process of accepting or declining the transaction. 2. Clearing, the process that transmits the final transaction information from the acquirers to issuers for settlement. 3. Settlement, the actual exchange of funds from the acquirers to issuers once clearing the transaction. The best aspect about the entire procedure is that it only takes seconds to go from Walmart through the processor to Visa, then your credit card's bank, and then back to Walmart. All of this happens via Visa's payment trails, allowing Walmart to verify that you have the funds to pay for your groceries, and the transaction will be completed once you leave the store. The average fees that Visa charges merchants, of which they take a small portion, which is 1.43% to 2.4%, depending on the type of transaction. Depending on whether or not the card is present, Visa and MasterCard incur varying fees. For example, there is a single rate for customers who present their card in person, rather than purchasing the merchandise online. The reason for the difference is because the risk of fraud is higher when a transaction is conducted online, rather than in person. Visa and MasterCard determine the interchange rates and assessment fees for payments that pass through their payment trails, but they only take the assessment charge, with the issuing bank receiving the remainder of the fees, 80%. Visa, for example, collects 0.13% of every debit card transaction, or 13 cents out of every $100 transaction. That may not seem like much, but when Visa handles 24,000 transactions each second, those cents add up to $21.8 billion in income. With that, I hope that you guys able to get a lot of value watching this video until the end. For next time, Business Wisdom, signing out.